people in our communities. Those of you who didn't get to hear it last night are in for a treat today. This particular informal presentation will have a question and answer period after. So feel free, things that you've been thinking of, things you want to know, this is the time to go ahead and make your comments known and your questions asked. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Kuykendall, and thank you so much for being here this morning. We'll go ahead and get started.
Yay! All right. Thank you so much. How is everyone this morning? Are you all feeling it? Yeah. Okay, that's good. Now let me find out who was not present last night. That's a lot of you all. And I really regret that because I can't repeat anything. But I will tell you one thing. I'm wearing the glasses not to be cute. I woke up yesterday morning with a busted blood vessel. The eye is a little light sensitive. Last night I actually took the glasses off because I was on a stage and they were way out there. And I couldn't leave the stage because they told me it would mess up the video. So I was able to take the glasses off. But I'm amongst friends. I'm going to take them off again. Just nobody act like, oh, golly, look at that eye. All right? But let me do this. Many of you who were not there last night, and I'm sure it was taped, so I know that you can get the tape. What I really planned to do this morning was not only to answer questions, because many of you who were there last night, I'm sure you have some questions. But what I also wanted to do was to fill in some of the blanks, some of the things that I had to rush through last night, because we only had an hour. And that sounds like a lot of time, but in my business, I just get warmed up after 60 minutes. And so there were some things I want to touch on. But first of all, let me remind all of you. I used a phrase last night, and it's a copyrighted phrase that we put on all of our merchandise. The sweatshirt says, "Proud to be a merchant of hope." And the reason that the sweatshirt was created is because I honestly and truly believe that those who choose to make a difference in the life of another are the real heroes and sheroes of this nation. Oh, you will hear a lot of speakers in your lifetime talk about what you can do for you, how you can be the best that you can be. But I'm one of those who honestly believes that you are at your best when you're a real change agent, when you look at a situation and you look at ways to make it better. You somehow improve everything about you when you focus on making a difference in other lives and you focus on making a difference in this society. Hope is the foundation of what we are as a nation. And all of us realize that many of those who came here of their own choosing came brimming with that one quality called hope. As merchants of hope, you will plant the seeds. You will touch lives. You will lift up, you will inspire, you will encourage, you will motivate, but the bottom line is you will be those who give hope to those who've never had it, hope to those who have lost it, and hope to those who really do want something more out of life. Now, if you understand what it means to be a merchant of hope, several of the things that I touched on last night, I talked about giving students what the research says they need to be successful. I talked about creating a climate that is conducive to learning, and I shared 5 very important climate variables. I talked about developing a teaching style that is congruent with the learning styles of children, because that's the only way you're going to enhance performance. I talked about communicating so that your heart is really the communicator and not your head. And I shared some insight through example of 2 different kinds of teachers. One incorporated everything that I shared and one didn't. And that whole audience, balcony and everybody else, realized that teaching style and the use of all of those variables I discussed can actually motivate people to perform at a higher level. And then I went into some of the school-related obstacles that very often keep us from being our very best. Some of those obstacles that I discussed, I talked about prior academic achievement. But keep in mind, one of the reasons that I spoke on that is because many people who start slow actually have within them the potential for greatness. One example that I shared was Albert Einstein, but I also shared the example of my own daughter. And I have a daughter who is an 8th grade teacher. She's been teaching now 8th grade for 5 years. The first 2 years of her 5 years of teaching, she was voted by the teachers, parents, and students at her school Teacher of the Year. But last October, when the Milken Foundation selected 100 educators nationwide, and they went to those schools of those educators and presented them with a big giant check for $25,000. And each one of those 100 educators got a huge, huge trophy and the designated title of National Educator of the Year. Well, my daughter Rashiki Kuykendall is the Milken National Educator of the Year, but understand, I shared some of her slow start. This was a kid who didn't start walking and talking until 17 months. We thought she was going to have to crawl into kindergarten. We didn't know what to expect. But I shared the example of those who achieved greatness after a slow start. And one example that I didn't share last night, but you need to know about. How many of you know who Bill Cosby is? One thing you need to know about Bill. I was at an affair a couple of years ago where Bill was being roasted. On an opaque projector, one of the roasters shared with us a copy of his 6th grade report card. Now, it wasn't just the low grades that got our attention. It was the comments each advisory of the 6th grade teacher. The first advisory she wrote, "I'm afraid Bill is hopeless." He thinks he's funny, but he's not. I don't think there's anything I can do to help Bill. The last advisory she wrote, just as I suspected at the beginning of the year, there's nothing I can do for this boy. I'm passing on to the next grade, but I'm convinced Bill will not make it. The sad truth is, Bill believed it. His grades got worse. Bill Cosby dropped out of school in 10th grade. Spent many years wandering aimlessly, a bunch of odd jobs. But a merchant of hope in the form of a school counselor stayed in touch with his mother all those years, convinced him when he was in his early 20s that there was too much genius there to go to waste. Bill Cosby was in his early 20s when he got his GED. And some of you may know that today he has an EDD, and he is one of the richest men in America. Bill is just an example of what can happen when we choose to be the wind beneath the wings of those we serve. But many of you are going to find in your student teaching years and in your practicing years that you're going to be stymied in your efforts. And you're going to be stymied because there will be other educators who will choose to use negative labels. I said it last night, negative labels need to be eliminated because negative labels create negative expectations. They do. And we all know the power of expectations. You've probably heard that beatitude that says, "Blessed are those who expect nothing, for they shall not be disappointed." But some of the labels that you're going to see, that label BD, behavioral disorder. Now keep in mind, we're all products of our own culture. Everyone in this room is a product of your own upbringing. And so you're going to see some students who have differences in cultural norms, differences in communicative norms. Many of you are going to see some students who will not know that they can't get loud. Because of differences in communicative norms, some students don't even know what loud is. It won't be unusual to find students whose behavioral norms reflect another subculture. As a juvenile justice attorney, I can't even begin to tell you how often I've heard young people say, "Well, my mama said when somebody hits me, I'm supposed to hit them back." Anybody heard that one? But isn't that also what our country has said? The reality is many young people will engage in behavior that they think is appropriate. They see nations do it. They see adults do it. And you're going to find that the best strategy, rather than victimize them or penalize them because of how they've been socialized, we have young people for 6 hours a day. We can re-socialize them. Another label gets overused. I'm talking now about a label called LD. Now, don't get me wrong, because I'm a former special ed teacher. Let me just tell you about my student teaching experience. How many of you are student teachers? Anybody? Okay, there are a few. How many of you expect to be student teachers? All right. You're going to find, as a student teacher, first of all, there are going to be some other teachers who are going to try to show you the ropes. Don't listen. The worst place to go as a student teacher is the teacher's lounge.
Yes, amen.
All right? You don't want to be poisoned. And so when I was a student teacher, my teacher told me, stay away from the teacher's lounge. And I liked her. She was a good woman. It was a second grade class. But she broke her leg. And I actually had to take over the class. I was in maybe about my third or fourth week. And the principal came to me and said, we've got another teacher. He said, they say lightning doesn't strike twice. Well, we've got a teacher with our EMHers, and she broke both arms in a car accident. He said, so I got to make a choice. I need to take you out of this classroom. He said, have you had any experience at all with EMHers? Well, I mean, I'm like the star student teacher in the school. I mean, he said it like I'm supposed to know what he's talking about. So I said, oh, yeah, EMH. Oh, yeah, I studied EMH. I know all about EMH. He said, great. He said, it's only going to be for a couple of weeks, but I need you to take the EMH class. And so we're marching down, and we go downstairs. And we get downstairs, and I'm thinking, well, I'd never even been to the basement. And we pass the nurse's station, and we go into this classroom, and there are only 8 kids in there. And I thought, wow, they got classes this small in this school? And then one little boy was already at the piano, and he was banging out something with just 2 fingers. I said, oh, God, how can I be so stupid? EMH, of course, this is a music class. And so I'm thinking that my job now is to help these musically gifted children, I'm thinking. I mean, that must be what the EM was, you know, excellence in music, some kind of way. And so immediately, I had a little music background, you know, played piano. And so I told the principal, I'm fine, this is great. And so, but I noticed they couldn't read notes. They didn't really understand the difference between a half note or a whole note. So I'm thinking, what have they been doing the first 6 weeks of school? And then I noticed not only could they not read music, they couldn't read. And I said, now this is unbelievable. And so I brought in, you know, tapes and you know, back then we had regular records. You all don't know anything about that. I mean, your generation doesn't even know who shot JR. So, but I started bringing in all this little stuff, you know. And the thing was, my students really loved me. And they were reading, and now I was able to teach them math through looking at the notes. You know, a half note and a half note equals a whole note. And they somehow just really started blossoming. 2 weeks, I was working with this class. And then one day, I was venturing down the hall on my way to the bathroom, actually, and a teacher came out of the lounge, and she said, oh, you're that new teacher who is having so much success with those EMHers. And I said, oh, you've heard. She said, everybody has heard. They're just so well behaved now, and they're acting different, and they're walking tall. And she said, where did you learn so much about working with the mentally handicapped? I said, mentally handicapped? She said, you are the EMH teacher. And that's when it hit me, what EMH meant. And I mean, I started trembling because I thought, oh, Jesus, oh, Lord, I cannot work with them. I cannot work with these kids. That's not my background. But I realized, as long as I didn't know, I was able to do some things that really changed their lives. Because I didn't know that they were supposed to be mentally handicapped, I was able to do some things, and I brought out strengths. And what I learned from that simple lesson was that really the best way to teach children is to start by building on their strengths. If I were to go around this room and ask each one of you to give me a strength, something about you that makes you special, something that makes you unique, I don't think anyone would say, oh, that's easy. My strength is higher order thinking. I don't think anyone would say, hey, calculus right here. No one would say spelling. And do you know a lot of adults cannot spell? I saw a bumper sticker once in a teacher's parking lot, and it did say, poor spellers of the world, untie. And you all are going to get that on your way home tonight. You're going to bust out laughing. But one of the things that you will do if I were to ask you for a strength? Most of you would give me something non-academic. Think about it. Oh, see, somebody just got the untie. That's all right. If asked for a strength, okay, they're still wondering. Everybody know what untie is? Unite. All right, poor spellers of the world, untie. If asked for a strength, you would give me something non-academic. You tell me about your love of children. You might tell me about your sensitivity, your compassion. You might tell me about your great sense of humor, your wonderful personality, your good looks. Am I hitting anybody? I mean, other than the good looks. When we build on strengths, we build confidence. But you see what a negative label does? It obscures those strengths. That label LD, all it tells you is that there's a learning disability. But all of us have disabilities. I can't sing. I'm singing disabled. All right? Some of you have challenges with other things. Am I right about it? The son that I adopted, that 19-year-old son who I know misses me. When we adopted him, we were apprised of the condition of his biological mother. We knew we would have some challenges. Well, my son is dyslexic, and if you know anything about dyslexia, you know it makes reading a real challenge. The most common form of dyslexia, something inside of the brain, causes the eyes to look at black print on a white page, letters seem to be shifting. That's the most common form. And a child will look at THE, long and hard. The T looks like it's a part of the previous word. And they'll look waiting for the letters to come back together. And it's a painful thing because when children have not been diagnosed dyslexic, they suffer in silence. They're not going to say to you, the letters on my page are moving. So it's a painful thing. Well, they failed my boy in first grade, and I knew something had to be wrong. I had him tested out of my own pocket. And when the results came back that showed he was dyslexic, I literally cried all the way home because I realized how misunderstood that boy had been. Well, in the book, From Rage to Hope, those who have that second edition, I share with you the benefits of my research because we found out that if you take a colored transparency and put it on that white page, it stops the shifting of the letters. My son carried around a blue transparency all through middle school. Got to high school, didn't want to carry around a blue transparency anymore, so instead we got him tinted glasses. Same result. But do you know the first day he showed up at high school with those tinted glasses on, you know what happened? Got sent to the principal's office. They thought he was trying to be cool. He insisted that he needed the glasses on to read, and they were like, yeah, right. I had to go up to that school and help everybody up there understand some kids need these glasses. Because really, many teenagers who are dyslexic and never been diagnosed, they will put on a pair of tints or a pair of shades, and suddenly they can read street signs, can see the back of the bus. And when they put those glasses on in school, as soon as you tell them to take them off, they will, and at that point, they pull away from learning. So I don't care if you've got to have whole classrooms of students sitting in there reading with sunglasses on. What difference does it make if it gets that child excited about learning? My son is also auditory deficit disorder. That simply means it takes him a few seconds longer to process what he just heard. But again, he has been diagnosed. Many of you are going to see some students who are auditory deficit disorder and they've never been diagnosed. But you will see their symptoms because these will be the children. The parent has probably already come up to school and said, he's hard-headed, don't listen, red flag number one. These are the children who will raise their hands in class and say, could you repeat those directions? And there's always that teacher who says, you should have been listening. Now, I know that doesn't happen down here in Salisbury. These are going to be the children who will get check marks, doesn't listen, check marks, doesn't pay attention, doesn't follow directions. These will be the children who will turn to their neighbors in class and say, do you know what we're supposed to be doing? And then somebody says you can leave the class for talking. When you see those symptoms, that's an indication that that's a student who needs a multisensory approach to learning. Now, those of you who were there last night, you got an example of multisensory teaching. When I was teacher Y, I was multisensory because I knew you could almost see that flying carpet. You could taste that cup of water. You could smell those flowers. Well, as a mother, I learned I had to be multisensory at home. When my son was a little boy, I could never go into one room and shout to him in another room, hey, baby, I want you to go upstairs, brush your teeth, take off your clothes, put on your pajamas, I'll be right up. If I had done that, I'd get upstairs and find him sitting on the side of the bed naked, trying to figure out what else I said. I learned I had to look at him, give him an eye hug or an arm hug, and then I could say, hey, sweetie, I just want you to go upstairs, brush your teeth, take off your clothes, put on those pajamas. I'll be right up. And then we would connect. Now, everybody probably noticed I'm talking to, this is Heather. This is Heather, woman. I was in another state not long ago. There happened to be a man sitting in front of me. I said the same thing to him. He stood up and said, it sounds good to me. I have learned to be careful, all right? If you are seeing the symptoms, this is a child that needs a multisensory approach to learning. Now, my son is also ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, but he is bona fide. And I say that because in my book, From Rage to Hope, there's a chapter on the need for discipline. In that chapter, I share with you new research that lets us know there are 14 symptoms of ADHD. And unless all 14 are in place over a 6-month period, what you might be having is just a kid having a good day, because all 14 symptoms have to be in place. And I want you all to also understand something, particularly those of you who are working with smaller children. The last part of the brain to develop is something called the frontal lobe. That's the part of the brain that judges risk. That's the part of the brain that understands time sequences. There used to be a time when we thought that the frontal lobe was completely developed by the age of 10. Well, there's now new studies that show in many people it may not fully develop until the age of 20. Now, obviously, your auto insurance companies know something about that, which is why our premiums are so high for teenage drivers. But we need to understand we're still working with children, those of us who teach. So when you say to an 8-year-old, shut up and sit down, and they get up 2 seconds later, well, the frontal lobe didn't tell them that you meant forever. We have to understand that many of the challenges we face as educators with discipline are simply slow frontal lobe development, and that's why your patience is so, so important. Remove negative labels and turn them into positives. My son, whenever I saw teachers who would put those negative labels on him, I would quickly tell him, no, 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 no. This is not what you are. You are gifted beyond words. You're brilliant. You're compassionate. You're sensitive. You're lovable. You are talented. You are a remarkable human being. Because when the negative labels were said in class, things like stupid got out there. Things like inattentive. Things like lazy. Things like don't care. Things like discipline problem. I would not allow those labels to be used. But I'm an educated parent. Many other parents will accept the labels and in fact use them themselves. What I want you to do, I talk about building on strengths. Next to the name of every child that you have, I want you to write 3 adjectives that describe that child favorably. 3 adjectives that describe a strength. And then I want you to help that child to set goals for him or herself based on those strengths. In both of my books, I have a little table that I let you know this is how you do it. Because the most important thing to do is to help young people know that there is a high road for whatever gifts and talents they have. I had a student once, biggest liar I'd ever seen in my life. All the other teachers called him Lion Lewis. 15-year-old 7th grader. Already had a rap sheet. Daddy was incarcerated. Mama was on welfare. And when you caught Lewis in a lie, he had the snake neck long before it became popular. He would go, what? Lion? Oh, man. And I used to say, yes, Lewis, you're lying. But I told him, I said, boy, you are a genius. I said, Lewis, listen to me. Anyone who knows intuitively what to say and make people believe it. I said, boy, you would be a great politician. I hope there are none in the room. I just wanted him to know there was a high road to go with that ability because he was heading down the low road with it. So I used to tease him, excuse me, Congressman, can we talk? Governor, I need you over here to mediate a dispute for me. Senator, your words are so profound. It got good to him. One day he corrected me and said, hey, from now on, address me as president. I did. For 2 years, Lewis, I made use of that lightning wit. I used to get him to mediate disputes because he was a big-time gangbanger. And you know what? When you get the gangbangers on your side, all the other gangbangers will follow suit. I used to get to school early in the morning and see all his gangbanging friends, and I would say, hey, when you see Lewis, let him know I'm looking for him. Got to a point I'd get to school early in the morning, and I'd see his gangbanging friends, and they would say, hey, Lewis is looking for you. I saw him evolve right before my eyes, but I lost track of him after 2 years. And yet I returned to West Kenny Junior High a few years ago to speak, and I found out that Lion Lewis made it out of high school at the age of 20, spent a few years in a junior college before moving on to regular university, but you all need to know right now, Lion Lewis is practicing law in the state of New Jersey. Now he's doing some serious lying now, but at least he's getting paid. Another kid, I never saw this one, never met him, but I met his high school principal. This principal tells me this is one of the biggest class clowns the school had ever seen. The boy's best routine was imitating his teachers. They didn't think he was very funny. A group of teachers went to the principal. They said, expel this boy. His profanity is outrageous. We can't teach with him in school. Get him out of here. The principal said, oh no, there's got to be something we can do. So he called in the funny boy, called in all the misfits. He told them all they were going to be charter members of something called a comedy club. Now, he assigned his funniest faculty person to work with the comedy club as faculty advisor. Once a week they met, and they had to come up with something humorous that had a positive message for the rest of the school. It was a big success. Other kids had to audition for it. And then he came back to this funniest boy. He said, listen, we're going to have an assembly at night. We're charging admission. We're going to make you the star attraction. Boy, you better be good. He said, if it goes over good this fall, we'll do it again in the spring. We're going to make big bucks before we let you out of here. Well, I'm told that boy was funny then, and it's my understanding he's been laughing all the way to the bank ever since. Some of you may have heard of him. His name is Eddie Murphy. What I'm saying is every child is not going to get a PhD. Can I get a head nod? They're not all going to get MDs or JDs. What we want to do is build on strengths, so that every student we serve knows they can go out here and get a legitimate J.O.B. There should be a comedy club in your school, a rapper's round table, a magic music maker's melody room, a new U club for those young ladies who all miss class anyway because they're in the bathroom working on their due. When you build on strengths, you build confidence. And when you build confidence, you're going to get students to perform at a higher level. And that's also one of the reasons why I'm a strong proponent for in-school suspension. Discipline is important, but understand, many children will behave based on what the climate of a classroom dictates. When I gave those 5 climate variables last night, those variables can be used to effectively manage a room. Now, I know most of you are still young, so you don't have children yet, and you don't have families, but you're going to have a child one day. Those of you who are parents, let me see your hands if you already got children. Now, those of you who have children of your own, let me ask you this question. Your child breaks a house rule, does something wrong, and you know they're not supposed to do it. Do you say to that child, get out of the house for the next 3 days and don't come back? Anybody? No. When we are educators, by law, we are something called in loco parenti. That means you are the local parent. If you would not put your own child out for 3 days, don't do it to this one. In fact, when our own children mess up, even when we punish them, even when we take away privileges, we're about strengthening our relationship with them. Am I right about it?
That's right.
We want to strengthen that bond because we start thinking, now wait a minute, what did I do wrong?
Right.
I must not have made something clear. And so what we try to do is keep them a little bit closer to us. And no, you cannot go out. Even when we do those things that we know hurt them, we're still strengthening the relationship. One of the most important words for you to have in your vocabulary as an educator is that word called relationship. When you're willing to build a relationship that allows you to discipline with dignity, that allows you to help a child to grow from their mistakes, that's when you change a life. You put them away out of school, you're putting them further and further down that low road of life. because there is a correlation between suspensions and dropouts. And there is a correlation between dropouts and crime. And if you understand that, you can do something about your relationship. Keep in mind, it only takes one person to change a life. Just one. There is something called the Johari window. Anybody ever heard of the Johari window? Okay, it's very often a window. It was first of all invented by two brothers, Joe and Harry. And if you invented something, you name it after yourself too. But it's used to help us understand relationships and human dynamics. Picture in your mind a window with 4 panes, okay? Just a window with 4 square panes in it. The first pane, the first area of our human relationships is what I know about you and you know about yourself. You've got on what appears to be a black top. I know that. You knew it when you put it on, okay? So this is what's obvious. I know your name, you know your name, okay? This is what's obvious. But the second window is what I know about you, but you don't know about yourself. This is where your wisdom will come in your relationships with students. With Lewis, I knew he could take that lightning wit. I knew he could take that leadership and develop into something special. He didn't know that. 15-year-old 7th grader, gangbanger. He had not been exposed to what I had been exposed to. I say to my son all the time, boy, you just got here. You don't know everything. I want him to know that there are some gifts that he has. He has no way of knowing how they can be used on that high road of life. Very important window, because you want to help young people to find that hidden talent. But the third window is also important, because that third window is what I don't know, but you know. You've got a relationship with a student now, and you know what's going to happen? Because you have done due diligence in those first 2 windows, now you're going to find out some things. They're going to start opening up. And the more they open up and share things with you, you'll realize, wow, I had no idea that these things were happening in your life. But because I know them now, I can do some things. I can have some intervention. I can be a better advocate. Y'all follow what I'm saying? Third window is very important, but it is the fourth window. What I don't know about you, and you don't know either. This is the hidden potential. Last night I shared a story about a 5th grade teacher who totally changed my life. Those of you who weren't there last night, her name was Mrs. Odom. And keep in mind, by the time I got to 5th grade, I hated school. And that was because I was always punished as being a behavioral problem. All the teachers would say 5,000 times, I will not talk in class. And they would always tell me, bring it back tomorrow, signed by your mother. Now, I was a talker. I'd sit in the back of the room thinking I'd sit back there and run my mouth and nobody would be able to tell. But they all heard me because I had a voice that carried. But Mrs. Odom was the teacher who totally changed my life, because she helped me to realize that what I had was actually a gift. She actually said to me, if we could just get you out of 5th grade, I'm convinced one day you'll make a whole lot of money talking. I had an opportunity several years ago to speak to 2,500 new teachers for Chicago public schools. And I had told Mrs. Odom that, you know, I'm doing great things now. She was shocked. First of all, she couldn't believe I had a doctorate. She said, I knew you were going to do some great things, but this is unbelievable. And then she found out about the law degree. She said, this is incredible. So I invited her down. She had never heard me speak. And I told her I'm speaking to 2,500 new teachers. But what I had planned to do was to present her with a crystal apple, and to bring her before the audience to let them know that this woman changed my life. Well, when I gave her the crystal apple, she was overjoyed. The black hair that I loved so much as a student was now beautiful white. And she took that apple and she told that audience, she said, I had no way of knowing what that little 10-year-old would become. She said, I'm just as surprised as anybody else. She said, and it touches me deeply to know that I had something to do with it. She said, but there was some potential there that none of us could see. All we could do was plant seeds. That's all you can do. You have no way of knowing what's in store for you if you plant those seeds that allow you to change that life. In both my books, I get into this in a lot more detail. But that's truly what merchants of hope do. They plant seeds of greatness, and these children will grow from them. If you're willing to plant those seeds, if you're willing to hang in there, even when they seem to get on your last nerve, if you understand that an educator has to have a heart big enough to reach out and to reach down, and a gut strong enough to hang in there, even when they are courting your rejection, you will find that this profession will bring you unspeakable joy. This profession will change your life. Now, I'm going to open it up for some questions because according to that clock on the wall, we've got about 20 more minutes. And I don't want you to leave here with questions that go unanswered. So before I say another word, let me just open it up. Any questions? Oh, come on now. Everybody can't speak at once. Yes?
You spoke last night again today about bringing out strengths in children. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Bringing out strengths. Okay. Next to the name of every child, 3 adjectives that describe that child favorably. Okay? That's number 1. Write them in your roll book. Now, in my book, From Rage to Hope, I let you know I think it's in the chapter, Motivating the Unmotivated. After you've identified those strengths, 2 things I want you to do. First, I want you to help that child to set goals for themselves based on that strength. And so in the book, I let you know that in a conversation with a child, you want to ask them something that they want to have, do, or be by the time they are 25. And I'm abbreviating all of this. I'm assuming you're going to get the book and read this because I have to skip over some things because that'd be 20 minutes going through all of the steps that I outline in the book. But the most important thing is help that child to come up with something they want to have, do, or be by the time they're 25. Don't change the order of the words and say be, do, and have. If you've read anything by Stephen Covey, he talks about being and doing and then having. My experience with young people is they don't think like that. They want to have it and then they want to do it and then they'll be something. So that's the order. Have, do, be by the time you are 25. And then when they give you a goal, now in the book I let you know that there are some kids who are going to say, I don't know. And I let you know that there are things you have to do to get around the I don't knows. But I want you to create a chart. Just 2 columns. The column on your left will have a heading called HELP, H-E-L-P. And I want you to talk to that child about everything about them that could help them to reach this goal. You get the HELP column started by saying, already I'm impressed by your blah, 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 your blah, 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 and your blah, blah, blah. Those 3 strengths you've already written in the roll book. And then you talk to that child. This is going to be an opportunity for you to celebrate who that child is. An opportunity for you to really, really lay out some non-academic strengths and get that child excited. And you'll constantly talk to them. And you know what? I like your sensitivity. I like the way you smile. I love the way you look out for your friends. I like what I call integrity in you. I love the way you part your hair. You know, this is an opportunity to celebrate the existence of this human being. And you know what? Whenever I do this activity with young people, they start smiling. Even if they start off like this, suddenly the smiles pick up. And they like to hear good things about themselves. After you've exhausted yourself for the help column, then the next column on the right will have this heading, H-I-N-D-E-R, hinder. And I want you to talk to that child and say, let's talk about everything about you that could possibly hinder your efforts to reach your goal. Now notice my choice of words. Not will definitely, not most assuredly, but could possibly hinder your efforts to reach that goal. And then you let them do the hinder column alone. Now the help column, you got that one going by saying, I'm impressed by your blah, 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 your blah, 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 and your blah, blah, blah. Don't do that with the hinder column. Don't get it started by saying, put down that nasty attitude. Never come to school on time. Put it down. Always disrespectful. Put all that down. No, don't do that. You will let them do the hinder column alone. And they're going to look at you and they're going to say, what do you think? And your responsibility, I already told you everything I see is in the help column. You want them to know that they have much more going for themselves than they have going against them. And you know what's going to happen? By design, the hinder column is going to be shorter than the help column. And And then you will say to that student, my commitment to you is to build on all of these strengths and to eliminate these weaknesses. Now, you know what some of the strengths are going to be? Some of the strengths are going to be things that you can lay a foundation for future goals. You'll be able to say, with this sensitivity, you would be an incredible doctor. With this kind of nurturing, oh, you would be a wonderful teacher. With the ability to be as imaginative as you are, you would be a great lawyer. You follow what I'm doing? You want young people to understand there is a high road for their many talents. Now, the second part of this, after you've done this activity with the student, now I want you to make a phone call home.
Yes.
Okay? Make a phone call home. Do not make the mistake of calling a child's house and asking for Mr. or Mrs. Jones because you got Tommy Jones in your class. And do not make the mistake of asking for a first name. All right? Hi, is this Donna? Don't do that, because they'll think you're a solicitor and they will hang up. All right? Instead, you will ask for the parent or guardian of Tommy Jones, because she might not be Mrs., she might not be Jones, and she might get offended. So the parent or guardian of Tommy Jones, as soon as that parent says, that's me, in your cheeriest voice, you're going to say, oh, I am so glad I caught you. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Cheery voice. I am blank, whatever your name is, your child's blank, whatever position you have. And then this sentence is very important. I know you're busy. Because as soon as you say, I know you're busy, that lets the parent know this will be a short conversation. I know you're busy. I just had to take these few seconds to call you to let you know I've had a chance to get to know Tommy. And already I'm impressed by his blah, 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 his blah, 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 and his blah, blah, blah. Those three strengths you have already written in your roll book. And then you will say to that parent, I cannot wait to get together with you so we can talk about the things we can do together to bring out the best in Tommy. End of conversation. You know what you got on the other end? A shocked parent. All right? Shocked parent. Several years ago, I was doing some work in Howard County, Maryland. Anybody from Howard County? All right. I was in Howard County, and I got a group of 10 teachers who had agreed to make these phone calls home because they wanted to see what the response would be. So they made the phone calls home. I met with the 10 teachers, and they told me the responses were phenomenal. And I asked for an opportunity to call the parents because I wanted to get feedback from them. Well, I called. I was actually able to reach that day 8 of the 10 parents. One woman was a grandmother. She said, I have never, ever, ever been so moved. She said, my grandson was down on the basketball court. I walked down there and I said, you come down off that rim right now. I just talked to your teacher. That is a wonderful woman. You will not give her a hard time. You're going to have a friend. Yes. And they're coming up to school to see what you look like because you let them see you are a different breed. All right? Build on strengths is something that we continue to do. And you use the Joe Harry window by helping them to realize there's some hidden potential there. We're going to pull all of this out. Just about every criminal who has made a name for him or herself could have been on the high road had those gifts and talents been channeled differently. Y'all follow what I'm saying? And it's so important that we do that. Okay? Anybody else? Yes.
A little bit about your organization, Kirk.
The organization Kirk, creative with a K, and innovative resources for kids. It's the name of my company. I incorporated Kirk in 1989. No. Well, I said 13 years ago. It's 17 years. Wow, math is off. 1989 was when we incorporated. We incorporated, and I created the company because I wanted an entity that would actually be able to handle long-term projects. Now, Crystal Kuykendall still gives anywhere between 135, 150 speeches a year. If all a client wants is one speech, then they contract with me. If they want long-term assistance, anything longer than a day, or anything that involves the use of other consultants, they contract with the company. Now, all of the publications, if you purchase anything from me, any of the books or sweatshirts or tapes, you purchase them and your checks are payable to Kirk. That's the company. The company meets the payroll, handles health benefits, but that's what the company does. Now, the name, Kirk, those of you who were there last night heard me tell the story of my husband. My husband's nickname was Kirk. And so I wanted to create an entity that would help me to realize Kirk is still taking care of Crystal. And so the company is actually named in his memory. Okay. Yes.
You may choose not to do this, but since there's a lot in here that our vice students said that weren't here last night, I was wondering if you could maybe in a quicker fashion, for your sake, take us through that story again with a list of 20 words and then retell it. I'd like to do it with them on our friend.
The X and Y, teachers X and Y.
Even if it's just an abbreviated version, but how we learn those 20 words.
Okay, there was an activity that I did last night, and keep in mind, the activity came after. Now, this is going to be real abbreviated. I had shared with the group 3 needs that students have. The need for affection. Now, those who were there last night, you're going to tell me what those needs are. What were the 3 needs?
Affection.
And achievement. So I talked about how we must meet those needs, but I also shared 5 climate variables. Anybody remember what the 5 climate variables were? Okay, we don't have a whole lot of time. 5 climate variables. Physical proximity. You see that I asked for a lapel mic? Because I believe that teachers, if you stay in the front of a classroom, you're going to miss an opportunity to connect. You give eye contact with every student. Physical proximity, courtesy, praise and affirmation, acceptance of feelings, and I like to use something called feel, felt, found. I talked about that. I know how you feel. I felt the same way before, but this is what I found out. And the last climate variable is called appreciation of differences. Then I helped the audience appreciate the fact that our teaching styles are congruent with learning styles. When we teach through the use of personal examples, anecdotes, and stories, you all have probably discovered by now that's how I teach. When we teach through the use of either whole group instruction or heterogeneous grouping, cooperative learning, and inclusion. When we relate learning to the reality of our students, something that they can understand and relate to and grasp, okay? Then I also talked about how we communicate. Communication is total person to total person. Only 7% of what we communicate is words. That's it. 7%. If I were to stand here right now and say, I like all of you, somebody wouldn't believe me. I said the words. But since that was only 7% of what got communicated, what you actually picked up on is 38% of what I communicate. It's communicated through rate of speaking. Okay, ladies, mother ever tell you to watch out for fast-talking men? And see, now the research tells us it's the slow talkers we should worry about. Rate of speaking, tone, and volume. But 55% of what we communicate through body language. Posture, the folding of the arms. There's a book called How to Read a Person Like a Book by Gerald Nirenberg. And he talks about the signals that we send when we fold the arms. Defensiveness, hostility, a desire to be left alone. Now, after I went through all of that, and it took about maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go through all of that, I said to the audience, how we teach will enhance performance of our students, and you need to understand that. Ability tests do not accurately measure ability. They're snapshots of performance on a particular day and time. What you want to do is to create students who are so excited about you, because when they get excited about you, they will perform at a higher level. You want them to be so excited that they perform. And I showed by example what I meant. Now, I'm going to pretend to be 2 teachers. One will be teacher X and the other one will be teacher Y. You tell me which one you think is the most effective. This is teacher X. Good morning, class. I said good morning. Good morning. Oh, that's just fine. I know what to expect with this group. I had most of your brothers and sisters last year. But I'm teaching, and if you try very hard, you'll learn. Now, the memo that I received from the superintendent says if you learn 20 words and phrases, you get an A in my class, but most of you all won't make it. But I'm teaching. And if you try very hard, you will learn. Now, the words and phrases are, Paper door, bed, Bible covers, floor, chair, window, flowers, nails, cup, water, flying carpet, good, your blimp, happy birthday banner, RFK Stadium, Church, Saints, Minister, Sunday School. Now, someone give me those words and phrases right now in order. Yes, sir. You're not trying. And your mother's going to hear about this. Anyone want an A in my class? 20 words and phrases in order. You know what? I've had it with you. I've had it. What period is this? Okay, maybe this is a slow group. I'll slow it up for this bunch. The words and phrases again. Paper, door, bed, Bible, covers, floor, chair, window, flowers, nails, cup, water, flying carpet. Goodyear blip! Happy birthday banner, RFK Stadium, Church, Saints, Minister, Sunday School. Now, someone give me those words and phrases right now in order. Yes, ma'am. Oh, see, I can see now. Learning means nothing to you. I'm teaching as hard as I can, but you are not trying to learn. Anyone give me those words and phrases right now in order? Okay. Since learning means nothing to you, since you don't care about your future, I'm giving all of you what you just earned. You have all just failed. Now laugh about that. Now, got a little chilly in here, didn't it? Let's change the climate of this classroom. Let's change the style of the teacher and see if that doesn't change your performance. This is Teacher Y. Good morning, class. Good morning. Oh, I know you all can do better than that. I got the best class in the school. Good morning, class. Good morning. Ooh, am I excited? I am so excited. I'm almost out of breath. Got a memo from our superintendent. Memo says you learn 20 words and phrases, you automatically get an A in my class. And I've been bragging all morning. I told everyone I ran into on my way to class, every student in my class gets an A. Even those of you sitting way in the back, you got an A coming today. Every student in this class will get an A. Now I'm going to give you the words and phrases, and then I'm going to make certain that you learn them. Now listen carefully. The words and phrases are paper door, bed, Bible, covers, floor, chair, window, flowers, nails, cup, water, flying carpet, good, your blimp, happy birthday banner, RFK Stadium, Church, Saints, Minister, Sunday School. Now don't worry about it. You are all going to learn these words. But to make sure you do, I got to tell you a little story. I was in a hotel room once, and someone came along, and they slid a sheet of paper right under my door, landed right by my bed on top of the Bible. I pushed the covers onto the floor, picked up a chair, threw it out of the window, landed in some flowers. I love flowers, but they turned to nails. So I picked up a cup, in it I ran some water, looked up and I saw a flying carpet the size of a Goodyear blimp, carrying a happy birthday banner, flying right over RFK Stadium, flew right into a church where there was some saints and the minister teaching Sunday school. Easy stuff. Let's do it all together. Someone slid a sheet of paper right under my, landed right by my, on top of the, I pushed the, onto the, picked up a, threw it out of the, landed in some. I love flowers, but they turned to, so I picked up a, and I ran some, looked up and saw a, the size of a, carrying a, flying right over, flew right into a, where there was some, and teaching. Easy stuff. Easy stuff. And listen, you all are so smart, you don't need that story. You can do it without the story. Let's do it without the story. Let's go.
Paper, door, bed, Bible, covers, floor, chair, window, flowers, nails, cup, water, flying carpet, Goodyear blimp, happy birthday banner, RFK Stadium, church, saints, ministers, Sunday.
Everybody got an A. Give yourselves a hand. And I'm going to tell you, this class is so brilliant, you can do that backwards. Oh, yes, you can. You can do it backwards. Let's do it backwards. Let's go.
Sunday school, ministers, saints, church, RFK Stadium, good dinner, good year limb, flying carpet, water, cup, nails, flowers, window, chair, covers, Bible, bed, door, paper.
A++. Give yourselves another hand. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what just happened. Think about it. Ray Charles could have seen what just happened in this room. The only thing that changed was the style of the teacher, the climate of the classroom, and those variables changed your performance. Remember, you can threaten students with failure. You can threaten to call their mom every day. But until you change how you teach what you teach, you won't change their performance. If you can understand that, you'll make a difference. I want to close it out. First of all, any more questions? One last question anybody have? All right, I have an email address, and it is simply my name, www.CRYSTALKUYKENDALL.com. I respond personally to all of my emails. If you think of a question, even if it's 5 years down the road, feel free to send me an email, and I will promise you an answer. I want to close it out by reminding you of a story I once heard about two children. One had a very positive attitude. The other one had a very negative attitude. A team of psychologists came together. They said, let's do something to make this negative child a little less negative and the positive child a little less positive. So they took two rooms. Now, each room was triple this size. Took the negative child to his room first. They filled every inch of this room with brand new toys, all the latest games. I mean, games I can't even name. Everything that was modern and high-tech was in there, even some of the old stuff, like bikes and trains and Sega and Pac-Man. I mean, this room was a child's delight. In fact, you all would have had big fun in this room. Everything was there. They told this kid, you got an hour to enjoy yourself. Well, he was negative. They opened the door, let him see all this good stuff. They closed the door. Now, there was this positive child, and he couldn't wait to get to his room. Marched him down the hall. Another room triple this size. Door was closed. He couldn't see him, but he was bouncing up and down. He said, ooh, I can't wait. But now the difference is they were putting this child into a room they had filled waist deep with horse manure. Opened the door, they heard him, pushed him in, closed it. Hour later, they looked in on the negative child. He had broken up and busted up everything, sitting over in a corner crying. They said, oh, my God. I wonder what happened to the positive child. Rushed down the hall, they couldn't believe it. Opened the door, this kid was going, whee, yippee! He was flipping it over this shoulder, more over that shoulder. It was all over his face and hands. They said, boy, what is wrong with you? And he goes, ah, ha, ha. You can't fool me. I know there's a pony in here someplace. What I'm saying to you, my friends, is you are looking for the pony. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right.